In this video, we'll be diving into data preparation on Azure ML, where we'll explore how to set up your Azure machine learning environment to importing, organizing, and refining datasets. We'll cover the essential steps to prepare your data for machine learning workflows. From the previous session, we discussed the fundamentals of cloud computing, including its types, benefits, and we also learned how Azure Cloud Services empower organizations to build and manage workflows. We also introduced Azure Machine Learning Studio and explored how it makes the machine learning process easier, from building, training, and deploying machine learning models. Today's topic builds on that foundation, so if you haven't watched it yet, I encourage you to go back and check it out for context. Let's get started and learn.
Hello and welcome back. In this video, we'll be diving into data preparation on Azure ML, where we'll explore how to set up your Azure machine learning environment, to importing, organizing, and refining datasets. We'll cover the essential steps to prepare your data for machine learning workflows. From the previous session, we discussed the fundamentals of cloud computing, including its types and benefits, and learned how Azure Cloud Services empower organizations to build and manage applications effectively. We also introduced Azure Machine Learning Studio and explored how it simplifies the process of building, training, and deploying machine learning models. Today's topic builds on that foundation. So if you haven't watched the video yet, I encourage you to check it out for better context. Now let's get started and learn. The very first step while using an Azure resource is to create an Azure account, otherwise known as an Azure subscription. An Azure subscription is the primary unit that provides access to Microsoft Azure services. It acts as a container for resources such as virtual machines, databases, and storage accounts. This subscription also plays a key role in billing, tracking costs based on resource consumption. Some of the components of an Azure subscription includes the billing unit. The billing unit is responsible for monitoring resource usage and calculating charges. The costs are directly associated with the payment method linked to that subscription, and this component allows organizations to analyze expenses and optimize your spending. Then we have the resource organization. Resources can be logically grouped to enhance management and control. Grouping these resources helps in applying consistent policies, setting up budgets for particular resources grouped together. This means when you have Azure ML Workspace and you have an Azure Data Factory, and then you group this together, you can set a particular limit. Let's say, for example, you're spending 2 million naira on this particular resources. This is the cap. When you are being charged more than that, then these particular resources cannot use more than that. And then when you have other services as well, these services can also be grouped together. It also allows you to manage access to different resources. This ensures operational efficiency and better visibility across services. 3. We have the access control. Azure enforces access control using what we call the role-based access control, RBAC. RBAC ensures that users have appropriate permissions based on their roles. So you give particular roles to particular users, and then this allows you to have more control over the resources. You can state that this particular users can delete a particular resource, and this particular users cannot delete any resource on the workspace. This mechanism enhances security by restricting unauthorized access to resources. 4. Each subscription is linked to an Azure account, and this account holds payment and owner details. The account is the primary point of contact for all administrative actions and billing inquiries, and also proper account management is crucial for maintaining subscriptions integrity. And lastly, each subscription has what we call the quota limits. Azure subscriptions have predefined limits on Azure resource usage. These limits help prevent overuse and ensure availability within allocated capacity. Quota management is essential for planning and scaling workloads effectively. Azure has different subscription types, starting with the free tier. With the free tier, you get limited access with free credits for experimentation. It's available to anyone with $200 free credits for 30 days. Free access to 55 plus services for a whole 12 months and requires a credit card for sign-up. This is best for general users exploring Azure. Then we have the student plan. The student plan offers free subscription with credit for educational purposes. It's available for verified students with $100 credits to be used for 12 months. There's no credit card required, and it includes free student-friendly tools and learning resources. This is best for students learning and experimenting with the Azure platform. Then we have the pay-as-you-go model. With the pay-as-you-go subscription type, you get charged based on resource usage. So no upfront costs are associated with the pay-as-you-go model. You only pay for what you use. This is flexible with no long-term commitment. And this pay-as-you-go subscription is suitable for startups, individuals, and unpredictable workloads. The charges are based on actual consumptions of the services. And finally, we have the enterprise agreements. This is mostly suitable for large organizations with predefined pricing and features. It requires a minimum commitment of typically 3 years and offers discounted pricing and benefit for large organizations. The enterprise agreement provides centralized billing and management. It's best for big organizations, enterprises with predictable and high cloud usage. And this gives us an overview of what we have in a free account and what we have in a pay-as-you-go subscription account. These are the steps to create an Azure account. Click the link on the screen. And here you go ahead to try for free. And you can sign up, or rather, you can decide to search for Azure Portal. Click on the first link that appears on your screen and proceed to create an account. On the account creation page, enter a valid email address. Next, create a strong password. And next, enter your first and last name. Then you would be required to enter your birth date. This is going to be the birth month, followed by the birthday and the birth year. Next, you're going to be required to verify your email address by going to your email address and clicking on the link to verify that particular email you've used. Next, you're going to complete a puzzle to verify that you're human. After completing the initial stages, then you'll be brought to this pane and be required to enter your name, email address, and your phone number. You then proceed to verify your phone number via receiving a text from Microsoft or receiving a call. Then scrolling down, you would be required to enter your physical address, your city, your postal code, and your state. And lastly, read and understand the Microsoft Customer Agreement and the Microsoft Privacy Statement, checking the boxes that's most relevant to you. Then you'll be required to enter your credit card information for identity verification. This is done to identify that you are who you say you are. A charge of less than $1 will be applied and later refunded to your account. After completing these simple steps, then you would have been able to successfully create an Azure account. And remember, Azure provides you with $200 credits, which you could use in the first 30 days after creating an account. So on the landing page, this is how it looks. Scrolling all the way down, you can navigate your subscriptions, check out your resource groups if you've created some, see all of the resources that are available here, and then here you have your dashboards. You can as well access Microsoft Learn, Azure Monitor, the Defender for Cloud, and also manage your cost right here. Then going all the way up, now we can take a look at some free online courses that we could take with Microsoft Learn, and let's check this out. So right here, you're able to search for different Azure trainings. So for this course, we could decide to search for Azure Machine Learning, and let's see what we have. So as you can see here, you have a whole different courses you could take about Azure. So this says work with computer targets in Azure Machine Learning. You can go all the way down and check out courses that might be of interest to you, and we still have some more on the second page. Same goes to the third and the fourth page, and let's still check out the next one. We have demo videos.
If you're somebody that loves to learn with videos, Microsoft has come up together with a whole lot of videos to help you. Right here you can access so many videos that will teach you about the Azure ecosystem and each and every service offered by Azure. And next, you can as well start a project with the Quick Start Center. So the Quick Start Center are also short minutes, 20 minutes video clips that allows you to learn from scratch how to create accounts and go through using some of those resources. Here you can see getting started in the Azure portal. This is 20 minutes. You can starting your project, pricing and management, choosing a resource to display. So if you're a beginner, this would be your go-to guys to learn about different services offered by Azure. So I'm just going to go ahead to close these tabs. I love to keep my desktop clean. You can explore support resources here as well. So now let's create an Azure machine learning resource. How do we do that? First things first, the first thing you do is to click on the create a resource button. I would click on this, and then here you have a bunch of services that are available to you. You just have to go ahead. We search for what? We search for Azure Machine Learning. Azure Machine Learning. I'll click on enter, and then here we are. So these are services that are related to Azure Machine Learning, and then we just get to select which one we're interested in. So we're interested in Azure Machine Learning, and then I'll click on that. Here it's going to take us to the page where we are to configure our Azure Machine Learning resource. So I'll click on create. And right here we get to go through the different tabs which we would configure to set up our resource. So first things first, we'll start with the basics, then we move to networking, encryption, identity tags, and then we finally go ahead to create. So here I have different tabs that I need to configure to set up my Azure Machine Learning resource. So I'm going to start off with the basics. Firstly, we need to select what subscription are we using. So if you're using a free trial subscription, you can just go ahead and select free trial, and then if not, you select the subscription that you're on. Then we need to select a resource group. If you've created one, you just get to select your resource group, or you can just instantly create a new resource group. You just need to name it. So all your billings would be attached to that resource group, and then this helps to ensure that you can set up what exactly gets billed. So possibly you have particular categories of services that you are using with Azure, and then you can put all this under one resource group, then create another resource group, and then give access to a particular set of people. So this allows to give levels. So there are levels to the authentication authorizations to services. If possibly you have booked, you have planned that you're only spending $1,000 on this particular services, so you can just have a resource group and then you track that resource group. All right. So we're going to select Deep Tech Ready program. This is the resource group that I've created already, and then I need to also fill in the workspace details. Configure your basic workspace settings like its storage, connection, authentication, containers, and more. If you want to learn more about this, you can just hit on this and then learn more about what workspaces are. But we've already explained in our last video what workspaces are. We mentioned that it's the central hub that takes care of all the services associated with Azure Machine Learning. So I need to give my workspace a name. What name do you think befits our workspace? So I'm going to name this workspace Azure ML workspace, and then the whole information here are going to be pre-filled for you. So with the region, you get to select a region that is closest to you. So these are different regions you can select from. For me, East US does it for me. because of my location. Then your storage account, this is going to be auto created for you, so you can just go ahead with this. Your key vault, you can just stick to the defaults right here. Azure application insights, just like we explained in the last video, this allows you to take care of telemetry information about your models, looking at the latency, looking at the time it takes for your models to get completed, which ones did not run completely. Application insight takes care of that. So all these are requirements you have to check. And then container registry, so it's either you create one now or it's created when it's needed. So I'll just leave this as none. If you wish, you could create one, so I'll leave this as it is. I'm not going to hit on review and create, rather I'm going to go right to networking. So on the networking, you can decide to select public or private with internet outbound, or private with approved outbound. Here we're just going to stick to public. And then under encryption, you can just leave encryption as it is. The identity as well, stick to credential based access. That works perfectly fine. If you want a higher level of you decide to you want to manage your identity, you can just go ahead and go with identity based access, but credential based access does the magic. Going down to tags, if you decide to have particular tags for organization, you can go with tags, but I'm just going to leave it as it is. These are the most important things that we need to put into consideration for now. Our subscription resource group must be there, the name of your workspace, and then all these are pre-filled in for you. Right, I can now go ahead to click on review and create. So it's going to review my configurations and validate them before I go ahead to hit on create. So it's running final validation. This could take just a few minutes, so we'll wait for this. Beautiful, so validation passed. Now I can just hit on create. So creating this might take a minute or two, so let's wait patiently for this to complete. Here, so you can see deployment in progress. Beautiful, now we have our deployments completed. Now let's access the Azure ML resource we've just created, and then this is how the interface looks like. It's still loading. We can see the name of our resource group, the location, the subscription is a free trial, the storage we're using, which was created by Azure ML. It's required, it's part of the dependencies we discussed in our previous video. Studio web URL, if you want to just access the studio via URL, you can just copy paste this on one of your tabs, and then these are a bunch of information regarding the workspace that was created for us. If you do remember, when we discussed what we discussed in our last video, that there are particular 4 dependencies that come along with Azure ML workspace. We mentioned the storage, we mentioned the key vault, we also mentioned the app insights, right? We also mentioned the container registry as well. Now this provisioning state is what? It has succeeded. Let's go right in and look at what we can do with this workspace of ours. Now we can go ahead and launch our studio. Perfect, so this is how it looks like, and then we can just scroll through the whole interface to see what we have. And then here on our menu we have the home. On the home page we have everything brought together, and it's easy, it gives us easy access to different resources over here. And then we have the model catalog. Then under authoring we have our notebooks, our AutoML, and we have the designer. We are going to spend a lot of time on the designer in this video. Then we have our assets. We discussed assets where we said we have data, our data sets and assets, we have different jobs, we have our pipelines, environments, models, and we have our endpoints as well. Under management we have our compute. So those are the managed resources we discussed in our last video. So we have compute, monitoring, data labeling, our linked services, and we have connections. Right, so we're going to now go ahead to create a compute cluster. What's a compute cluster? So a compute cluster is a set of virtual machines designed to handle large machine learning workloads, like training your models, and then also running batch jobs. So you have batch jobs altogether. The compute cluster acts like a processor. It's your computer that runs all these tasks. It's scalable and shut down when you are idle. So we're going to create, we have compute instances. We mentioned the difference between compute instances and compute clusters. Compute instances are virtual machines. It's a single virtual machine. Compute clusters have a bunch of virtual machines working together. We have our Kubernetes clusters here, attached compute and serverless instances. So for this tutorial, we're going to be sticking to compute clusters. We're going to create a compute cluster. To create a compute cluster, you have to go through two settings. You have the virtual machine settings, you have the advanced settings as well. Under the virtual machine settings, you'll be required to select a location. So always select the location that is closest to you. For me, my workspace is located in East US 2, so I'm going to stick to East US 2 as well for my compute clusters, because that makes them to be in the same location. It's easier for them to communicate. Then we have virtual machines, so you could either go for dedicated or low priority. So low priority virtual machines are cheaper, but don't guarantee the compute node, so your job may be preempted. So I'm going to stick to dedicated. CPU or GPU, I'm going to stick to CPU. Then virtual machine size, you can decide to select any virtual machine size depending on the workload, depending on how tasking the work that you want to perform with Azure ML is. So we're going to go through, I'm going to stick to the recommended options, but there are a whole bunch of options for you to select from. Going back up, I'm going to go back to recommended options, and under recommended options, let's see what option would work best for us. Let's see, standard DS11v2, the type under workload types, development on notebooks or other IDE, and lightweight testing. So I'm going to go for this. And how much does it cost? It would cost me 15 cents per hour. I'm just going to go with this and then click on next. Then under the advanced settings, this is where I get to give my compute cluster a name, and I'm going to name this Azure ML compute cluster 01. So this would be our compute cluster. Under minimum number of nodes, so when your clusters shut down, what's the minimum number of nodes that should be alive, that should be active? I'll set this to 0. Maximum number of nodes, no matter how tasking the job is, I want to stick to my maximum node to be just 1 for this video, but you could decide to change these numbers. Then how long should the system wait before the cluster shuts down? I'm just going to leave it as the default 120 seconds. Under advanced settings, you could decide to play around with your virtual network or assign a managed identity, but I don't need that. I don't need to also give in any tags, organization, or anything like that. I'm just going to go straight ahead and hit on create. This is going to take a few minutes to propagate. We're just going to wait and see. Okay, so it's creating already. Perfect. So our cluster is now created. Let's click on the cluster and see what we have. There are a bunch of information for us here. My compute name is named Azure ML CC01. It succeeded, and then we can see the subscription ID down here with the compute type, and all of the information here is where information about your node is being stored right now. It should be empty. Our jobs, if you have any jobs that we've used our virtual machine, this particular compute cluster to work on, it's displayed here. Under monitoring, this is where we're able to monitor what exactly we're using those clusters to do. Right now it's still empty because we just created this cluster. So this concludes creating an Azure ML resource and also creating a compute cluster. So next we're going to learn how to perform data preparation. We're going to start by exploring sample data sets that are made available by Microsoft, and we're going to see how to select particular columns of interest. To do that, we are going to move ahead to our designer. And on our designer, we could go ahead to create a custom pipeline or go with the classic pre-built pipelines. So we're going to go with classic pre-built, and here we'll go ahead to create a new pipeline using classic pre-built components. I'll click on create a new pipeline. Now this is how the interface looks like, and on this interface we get to work with a lot of components that are categorized. We have 16 sample datasets. There are 19 data transformation components that we can use. There are also components for computer vision, same for text analytics, and so many. So we're going to look at most of this. We're going to start with sample datasets. We can work with any of the 16 datasets here. Let's go ahead to work with the automobile price datasets. Now we've pulled this dataset to our canvas. There are two ways to do this. It's either with and click on use data, or we drag and drop the automobile price data onto the canvas. Now the whole of this square is the canvas, and this is where you drop your transformation stages and you create your pipelines right here. First things first, and always ensure you name your pipeline. So we're going to call this data preparation, and we could decide to give it a description. So let's say selecting custom columns. So we can select as many columns as we want, and I'm going to click on save. Now this is saved. Let's take a look at the data itself. To do that, you just need to right click. Upon right clicking, you could select to preview. You could select to preview that data, and then you're able to see the data itself. Let's expand this pane. Now this is the data set. We have 205 rows, and the data has 26 columns. And then these rows, the columns, we have columns for symboling, normalized losses, the make of the cars. This could be Alfa Romeo. We have Audi. We have the BMWs. Fuel types, those that use gas, diesel. Then aspiration number of doors, the body style, and so many information about this, about cars, about automobiles here. Now we can see we have 205 rows and we have 26 columns. So let's say we want to use only the first 10 columns. So this columns would be symboling 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So we're going to pick from symboling down to wheelbase. So these are the 10 columns of interest that we want to use in our data preparation, for example. So how exactly do we get to select these columns and leave out the rest of the 16 columns that are not of interest to us at the moment? So it's pretty simple. To do that, all we need to do, first of all, let's close this pane and go right back to our data set. Okay, our data set has one node, only one node, because it's a data set. It only has the data output node. To select particular columns, you go to your component and search for the components that you want to use. Now we want to select columns, so let's just type select columns. What pops up? So we have select columns, transform, select columns in data sets. That sounds like what we want to do. Now I'll drag and drop select columns onto my canvas. What do we notice? That the data set itself has only one node, which is the data output node, but the select columns has two nodes. It has one, the one at the top is the data set, and then the one down is the result of the data set. We all know that when we need to select columns in particular data sets, we would need the inputs and then we need the output. We want to select columns. Okay, you want to select columns from where? And then after selecting the columns, I would love to see the output of those selected columns. To do that, you go ahead to drag the node from the data down to select columns. Now you have connected the data and the component for selecting columns itself. Going further, you would notice that here I'm seeing this emergency icon telling me that there's something I need to do, and when I select that, it's telling me I need to select particular columns that I do need. Now before I select those columns, I could decide to also see more information about this particular component. So I'll double click on this, and then this pane pops up. On this pane, I'm able to select the columns of interest. What are the columns that I want to select from the original data set? Then I'm also able to see the output settings. We're going to leave this as it is. The input settings as well, we'll leave this as it is. The run settings too. Where do we want this pipeline to run? Should it be on a serverless compute resource, or we want it to be on our own compute cluster that we've created? We'll see all of those. The node information. If this is the first time creating a node, you could decide to change the name of that node. So the name of this node is select columns in dataset. I think that's fine. You could decide to add a comment onto it, and then this comment could be select 10 columns. So we're only selecting 10 columns, and you can see that this comment has popped up on the component. Going further down, we have component information. If it's the first time you're using a component and you want to learn more about that component, you do not need to stress. All you need to do is to click on the components, and then go down to component information and click on learn more. You'll be able to see information about the component, how to use the component, what are the configurations that you need to set up for that particular component. And next here, like we've seen from the components, we need to select. So I'm going to close this, and I'm going to close this, and then here we can see that it's telling me that I need to select particular columns. Let's go ahead to do that. I've double clicked on the component, and I'm going to click on edit column. On edit column, you could decide there are two ways to select columns. You could select columns based on particular rules, or you decide to select column based on the name of those columns. So with rules, you could say in my data I only want to select numerical data, or I want to select categorical data. So let's do that. Let's say we want to select by column type. What options do we have? We could select categorical data, boolean, only the boolean columns, or the string columns, or the integer columns only. But for this example, let's go ahead to select by name. Selecting by name gives you the list of all columns that are in that data set. Now we want to select the first 10 columns. We said we're going with a symbol in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So these are the 10 columns that we want to select. We'll click on save. After clicking on save, we can close this pane. We have already, we can see that the emergency arrow, the icon calling our attention is now gone, and we can see based on the parameters, these are the columns that we have selected. What's next? What's next for us is now to configure and submit. Before submitting, there are some configurations you have to put in place. Two important things to note is that your experiment and your cluster, where you want your pipeline to run, are really, really important. You could decide to select an existing experiment if you do have an existing experiment. Like I have mentioned in our previous video, an experiment are more of iterations. I've done this. The next iteration, I might want to name that iteration so I know what has changed between the last experiment and the new one. I'm going to create a new experiment. I'm going to call this data preparation, and I'm going to say selecting columns. Now this is the name of my experiment. What exactly do I want to be displayed on when the job is running? What do I want to see? Data preparation is just fine, and then I could add a description. Selecting custom columns is fine as well. I don't need job tags at the moment. Let's move to the next configuration we need to set up. The input and the output, this can be left as they are. Going down to runtime settings, we need to select our cluster. So we're going to click on compute cluster. You know, we've created a cluster. We're going to select the cluster we created. So Azure ML 6601. Here we have this selecting data store. You can leave it as it is by default, and then we'll go ahead to review and submit. Now let's review this. Data preparation is the job display name, and then everything seems alright. The default compute is the compute that we created, and then we can just submit this. So this is going to take a few minutes to complete. I'm going to pause this video and play it back immediately it concludes. While our pipeline is running, we could decide to see what exactly is happening behind the scenes. To do that, go right into your jobs. We've just submitted this job, and then now we can see what's actually happening. So the data has already been pulled from the automobile price raw, and now the process of selecting those 10 columns is currently ongoing. To see further details about this process, we'll click on view profiling. So let's click on view profiling, and we're able to see what exactly is happening. Here we can see that we have this chart showing us, we could see when it was not started, when it's preparing, when it was queued, when it's running, and when it's finalizing. And the same information is displayed down here. It took it 4 seconds when it was in the not starting stage. Before it started, it took 4 seconds, and then it moved to preparing, spent a second, and then it has been in queue for over 4 minutes now. Going to refresh. You can always refresh to see if there are changes. We can see that yes, indeed there are changes. We could see now we have the bar for running, and then it's been running for how long? For just 36 seconds. So we're going to monitor this up until the pipeline has concluded. So I'll pause the video and continue right after the pipeline is successful. Congratulations, our pipeline just completed. So it took a total of 6 minutes 20 seconds to complete the selection of 10 columns. To see the results of this data set, while we're still on the jobs, we're going to click on jobs and go down to data preparation, selecting columns, right? And right here we're able to see the jobs that we have completed. So we just completed data preparation, this one, and right here we can see that we have the success icon. So let's preview and see the results of this pipeline, and I'll expand this. Now you can see we still have 205 rows, however we now have 10 columns. Now this is the output of the pipeline we just ran. We have the columns from symboling down to wheelbase, and we can as well see the statistics of the dataset itself. Now we have learned to make use of sample datasets and how to select particular columns from a large dataset. So next we're going to be learning to add column names to datasets. And how do we plan to achieve this? We're going to achieve this by importing a dataset via a URL, and then we're going to add column headers to that dataset. So this is really important, especially when you are working with data from an API or data from an external organization, and you need to add this to your machine learning workflow. Exciting, right? Let's get right in and learn. So we're going to go to our designer, and we're going to create a new pipeline. On this pipeline, we're going to go right into our components. So what components do you think we would need for this particular task? So we're going to start by renaming our pipeline, which we all know how to do. Let's still name this data preparation, right? But then what are we doing? We're editing metadata. Yes, and then we save. So this is the name of our pipeline. And under our components, we pull this out. We're going to search for import data. So we're going to drag this and we drop on our canvas. What do we do next? We would notice that this particular data importation, just like this data set, has only one node. It has the output data. What parameters do we require? Are we required to add onto this? We are required to look at to ensure we have our input data set, data store type, override data store name, and override data store path. So let's look into this further. Double clicking on the components, now we can select what data source how do we want to get our data. We're going to talk more about data stores towards the end of this video, but for this particular concept we're going to go with URL. So we're picking our data from a URL. Now our data source link, we have to provide the link to that particular data set. So I've prepared a data set for us, the same automobile data set. However, this time around the dataset does not have column headers. So I'm going to go into my GitHub repository, and I'm going to go right into automobile datasets. The datasets are going to be provided with the resources attached to this video. We're going to be picking the import 85 data. That's the data itself with no column headers. So this is how it looks. Okay, so you're going to click on raw to see the raw data so that we can get the link to that data set. Now this is the data, and I'm going to copy the URL to this dataset, and then we go back to our Azure Machine Learning tab. Now all I need to do is paste this URL. Upon pasting, if the URL is accessible, Azure ML should be able to preview the datasets. As you can see, we've previewed the dataset and we do not have column headers. Because there are no column headers, Azure ML automatically associates column names to it, like column 1, column 2, all up to column 26 with their data types accordingly. Now we won't select the path because this is going to store the folder path. We're going to uncheck this and we're going to save. Next, output settings. We do not have to do anything here. We'll close this. The same goes for input settings. Run settings, we do not have to touch this as we can configure this while trying to run the pipeline. And then we're going to check out the node information. With the node, we could decide to add a comment. I'm not going to add a comment, but we do know how to add a comment. And then if you have any questions regarding the component itself, always feel free to click on the learn more link. Now we have configured our import data component. Let's close this. Now what's next? I'll close the parameters. When the data is imported, I need to make edits. I want to add column names to the header of the datasets. And how do I achieve that? I would achieve that by pulling another component. Can you guess what component that is? That would be the edit metadata component. So I'm going to search edits, and then here it is. I'll pull this and drop onto my canvas. How many nodes can we see? We have two nodes, the dataset and the result dataset. For the datasets, I'm sure you would know by now, all we need to do is to pull from our imported data down to this dataset. So imagine this was dropped here and you want this to be well organized. You can just click on auto layouts, and then it's going to have your pipeline well laid out for you. Let me zoom in a bit. So 100. Why not make it 120? Perfect. I'm going to close this so that I have more space to work. Now I have imported my data and I've pulled in my edit metadata component. But then I still have to perform some activities. What exactly do I need to do? Let me check it out. I just need to click on this and look at the parameters. Okay, I need to ensure that I have the value for data type, for columns, data type, categorical fields, and then new column names. So how do I do this? We'll do that by double clicking on the components. Now, what we need to do is to start by editing the columns. When we check out this, it's telling us choose the columns to which your changes should apply. Because I want to edit the whole columns, I want to edit everything, I'm going to select everything. How do I do that? I do that by clicking on edit column. Like I mentioned earlier, you can do that with rules, by selecting any of this or by name. So what I'm going to do this time around, I'm not going by name, I'm going by rules, and what I want to do is to pick all columns and click save. By doing so, I've selected all columns. Do I want to change the data type at this point? No. Do I want to look at the categorical data? No. Do I also want to look at the fields? I'm not interested at the moment. What I want to do is to give my data new column names. Now, how do I know the column names to these data sets? To know the column names to the data set, I've already prepared the column headers to these data sets. So we're going to go right back into my GitHub repository. And then under automobile data sets, we have automobile column names. So I would click on that one. Then I'm going to copy, let's see the raw file. Here I don't need to get the link. All I need to do is to copy the headers, Control C, okay. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to go back to the Azure ML tab and paste right here. Now I've pasted the names to those columns. I do not need to change any other settings, then I would just go ahead and close this. One more time, let's look at the data we imported. Let's preview schema. As you can see, the names here are column 1 all the way to column 26. Then we close. Okay, now I have selected that I want to add column headers to them. Perfect. Next thing I need to do is to run my pipeline. And how do we run that? Run our pipeline. We do so by clicking on the configure and submit button. We ensure that we provide a name to our experiment and also our compute cluster. Now I'm going to create a new experiment and I'm going to call this. So this should be good. Next, beautiful. So this is validated. Input and output, I don't need to touch anything. Then I move to runtime settings. Now my compute cluster, I'm going to select the very same compute cluster we created together. I do not need to change any other thing here, and I'm going to click on review and submit. So I will just review. If everything looks good, I'm going to click on submit. Now this job is submitting, and then perfect, this job has been submitted successfully. However, the pipeline has to take some time to run. Now to take a look at my pipeline, I know how my pipeline is faring. There are two ways. Either I click on view details up here, or I go back to my jobs. So we've gone to the jobs earlier on. Let's click on view details. Now this brings us to this page, and here we're able to see our pipeline as it runs. Look at the time it takes. If there are particular errors, then it's going to show us right here. Beautiful. So the pipeline has completed in like 13 seconds. This is really super fast because I've run this particular process before. Had it been I've not, it should take around 6 to 10 minutes to complete. So if it takes time, do not worry, just sit tight and wait. Now let's take a look at the output that we have. The imported data initially, how does it look? We go down to double click on this, then you go to your outputs plus logs, click on show data outputs, and then click on preview to preview the imported data. Beautiful. Now this is the data that was imported. Column 1, column 2, when you click on any of those, you're able to see the statistics. Let's close. Powerful. Now looking at the edited metadata, what exactly has changed? Going down to output and logs, we go down to show data outputs, and let's preview. Perfect. Now we have our column names all changed to the required names. Selecting each of them, you're also able to see the statistics. Congratulations. Now you've learned how to get data sets from URLs and then how to give it new column names. Next, we're going to be learning how to change data types and feature types as well. So let's get right into it. We're going to create a new pipeline by clicking the plus button, and we're going to pull in the same data set that we used before. Always remember to rename your pipelines. So this is data preparation, and here we're editing feature types and data types. Okay, we're going to save this, and then we're going to pull this very same data set. We go under sample data and we're going to pull automobile price data raw. Next, we're going to still use the same component, edit metadata. So we're going to search for edit, and we pick edit metadata. I'm going to connect this to, and I'm going to preview my data set. So this is my data set, and as we can see here, the make here is a string feature, the fuel type is a string feature, while the normalized losses is a numerical feature. Now we're going to select any of those columns and change the feature types. Let's select the make and the fuel type. We're going to change the make from a string feature to a categorical feature. We're also going to do the same for the fuel type. Now let's close this. So we've previewed the data. What parameters do we need to set for editing metadata? I'm going to double click on this. We're going to click on edit column. We can edit by name. We're going to select the make and the fuel type. These are the two columns we want to make changes to. We click on save. What change do you want to make? If you want to change the data type, you change the data type here. Okay, specify the new data type of the column. So we have to change it here. And then for us, we're going to be making these two particular columns categorical columns. If you like, you could change the fields, make them either features, labels, clear features, clear labels. It depends. And then we're not going to change any other thing. I'm going to close this and I'm going to configure and submit. Now I need to select an experiment. I'm going to go with an existing experiment. I'm going to go with metadata edit. I'm going to use this one. Yeah, this is fine. Job display. Yes, this is fine. And then input and output. This cluster, select. Always remember to select your cluster and then submit. So now the pipeline is submitting and the pipeline has been submitted. We can view the details of the pipeline as it runs by going to the jobs here and go for this particular experiment. Then yes, so we have our data preparation running, and then we can click on it to view what exactly is happening. It has already went through the data. Now it's performing the task of changing the two data types we requested. Now I'm going to view the profile to know exactly where we are, like we've always done. This is going to take a few minutes, so I'm going to pause the video. Now our pipeline has completed. Let's check out our results. So checking out the results data sets, I'm going to expand this. If you look at the make, now we have the feature type to be categorical feature and the file type to also be categorical feature, while all other columns remain string features. So that's how you change data types and feature types. When running machine learning models, you need to store your data somewhere, and that place where we store our data on Azure is called Azure Storage Account. So how do we store data on Azure Storage Account? We need to first of all create an Azure Storage Account. After creating an Azure Storage Account, we'll upload our data onto Azure Storage, and then we access the data through our data store on Azure ML. Remember, the data store is a linkage between the data that is on your storage account and back here on Azure ML. So how exactly do we do that? Let's start by creating an Azure Storage Account. So we're going to head back into our Azure account. And right here, just like we created our Azure ML resource, we're going to click on create a resource, and we're going to search for storage account. And right here, we're going to select storage account, and we're going to fill in the required details. So we need to select a subscription, and then we need to select a resource group. If you don't have one, you create one. So we need to give this a unique name, and the names have to be in lowercase with numbers. Uppercases are not allowed, spaces are not allowed, hyphens and underscores are not allowed. So I'm going to name the storage account DTR, standing for Deep Tech Ready Storage Account. Powerful. So we have our name, and then for region we're going to stick to East US, and then looking at the primary service, just going to be Azure Blob Storage, and then we're going to stick to standard performance. Under advanced, we're not going to change much of this, and networking still the same. Data protection, this is fine. Encryption, this is also fine. The tags is fine. And let's go ahead to review and create. So it's validating our configurations, and then we're good. So let's create. So this is going to just take a few minutes. I'll pause and continue right after. So good. This deployment is now complete. Let's go to the resource. So down here, we're able to see details about the resource that we've just created. We're going to now go ahead to create a container. So a container is that placeholder that is going to store all our folders and all our data. So I'm going to click on container here, and we go ahead to create a container. So we'll still go deep tech ready container. So we hit on create. Now we have our container. Next would have our data sets uploaded. Now we have this particular storage where we can upload as many data as we want. Now let's upload our data sets. We'll be uploading 5 data sets. Browse for files, go to your desktop and select the data sets you want to upload. So I'm going to select this 5 and click on open. And then if a data set is already existing that has the same name with the data set you're about to upload, then you might have to click on overwrite if files already exist. But right now I'm good, so I'm just going to click on upload. Beautiful, and now we have all 5 data sets uploaded. Next we have to go back to Azure ML and access these 5 data sets through our data stores. Now let's head back to Azure ML. On Azure ML we'll go right to assets. We access our data. Now we can either create a data asset and all of this, but then we're going to be sticking to data stores. Under data stores, we're going to create a new data store. We need to have a linked service between the data store and the Azure storage account. We've seen this in our last video. So we're going to hit on create, and then we need to give our data store a name. So I'm going to name my data store Azure ML data store. Data store type, I could select any, but I'll be sticking to Azure Blob Storage because we created an Azure container right now which stores files in blobs. So we're going to stick to blob storage. For selection method, we could go for manual entry of keys, but since we're using the same Azure account, we're going to be sticking to the option that says from Azure subscription. This automatically pulls in our subscription, so it's pulling in this subscription. Next, we're going to be choosing our storage account. So we have storage accounts that we created by our Azure ML itself. We have one that I've already created beforehand, and then we have the DTR storage account, which is Deep Tech Ready storage account that we just created. So we select that one, and it should automatically select the container. So now we can just select the container as well. It wasn't selected. Save credentials or data, with the data store for data access, that's fine. Now we need to give it an account key. When you say Azure ML connect to my Azure storage account, there has to be a key. If not, just anybody can come onto Azure ML and connect to your storage using the data that you have there. But because the data you have on Azure storage is secure, you need to provide certain access keys to give access to that particular data. So to complete this, we need to head back to Azure storage account and pull out that access key. How do we do that? We go right back into Azure storage here. We go back home. So from here we can, but I'd like us to go back home, click on the storage account you created, and down here scroll down to security and networking. Right under security and networking, you should find access keys, and then in your access keys you're able to see your keys. Now this key is what you're going to copy and use to access this storage account. So you can pick up the first key you have here. So I'm going to copy this key and I'm going to hide it back. I'm going to come back right here and paste the key here. I'm now going to create. Now I have my data store created. Now to create the 5 data assets that I have stored on my storage account, I'm going to click on the data store I just created, which is the Azure ML data store. Right here, I should be able to see the data assets that I already have on that container, because now there's a communication. There's that linked service between the Azure ML data store and the Azure storage account. Go right ahead to create a data store, a data asset, and I'm going to name this dataset 1. I'm now going to add a description if I so wish, but it's not needed. And then I'm going to say the file type. You could choose any of those types. If you want to learn more about the different types we have, you can read this, and then you can as well go ahead to learn more. We're going to stick to file. That's of the type v2, and then we're going to click on next. Then we have to give it the storage path. So do we want to enter it manually or want to browse? So because we've already created a connection, there's a link, we can just automatically browse. If there's no link, then you have to enter storage path manually, but since we already have it, it's already selected for us, we're going to stick to this. And we can select any of these data sets. We're going to ensure that each of the 5 are imported into our data store as an asset. Now I'm going to click on next. So I'll review what I just selected, and I'm going to head right on and create. Another way to create a data asset is by going down into your data store and go into browse, select browse, and you can just browse the data sets directly. Now with this, all you need to do is just click on create as data assets. You can create this data as data assets. I'll click on this, and I'm just going to give it a name. I'm going to call this dataset 5. Let's go right back, and here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now we've learned how to create Azure storage accounts, how to store data on Azure storage accounts by creating a container and then uploading your data set onto the account. We've also seen how to create data stores, and we've seen how to link your data stores to your storage accounts. And lastly, we looked at how to create data assets from the data stored on your storage account, where we uploaded 5 data sets onto our Azure ML. So we have 2 data sets. How do we pick certain columns from one data set and add it to another data set? More like combining 2 data sets together. We do this by going to our designer and creating a new pipeline. On this pipeline, we would need to select the 2 data sets which needs to be combined together. How do we do that? We do that by bringing up our import datasets component, drag it onto the canvas, and configure this component. We've seen how to pull data from URL. Now we're going to use our data store. We'll select data store, and then we select any of these data stores. We store our data on Azure ML data store that we created. Now we can access the data sets that we've added as assets. Now we have all these 5 data sets for our use. I'm going to go ahead to select dataset 1 and click save. Upon validation, we can preview the data sets. So this data set has row number, customer ID, it has information about customers, their surname, credit score, geography, gender, age, and tenure. Beautiful. Next, let's go down and add a comment. This is dataset 1. Now we need to do the same thing for the second dataset. I could copy and paste this and then drag to the side. Now I can change the configuration on this one. Okay. Now I'm not going for dataset 1, I want dataset 2. Save. Now let's preview this. Still validating. Right after we preview, now we see that dataset 2 has information on customer information like balance, number of products they've purchased, do they have credit card, is the person active, estimated salary, exited or not, and then we save. I'm going to name this dataset 2. Now we have dataset 1 and 2, and I need to combine these 2 datasets. I want to pull the columns from 2 and have it merge with the columns on dataset 1. To do that, I'm going to pull a component called add columns. I'm going to drag this and put it right here in the center. Now I'm going to connect dataset 1 here and connect dataset 2 right here. To the work of add columns is to concatenate. Okay, I'm now going to configure my component. Right here I don't need to touch the settings. Here I'm going to say add columns from 2 to 1, so this could be from dataset 2 to dataset 1. Now to learn more about this particular component, you can always check out the link to learn more about it. Right after this, I will just go ahead to configure and submit. Do I want to use an existing experiment? No, I want to create a new experiment. Data processing, and then this is adding columns. Perfect. And then description would be this. Let's move ahead. Input, this is fine. I'm going to ensure yes, I have my cluster selected, and submit. So this is going to be validated and submitted. Beautiful. My pipeline is running. I could just go straight to the jobs and see how my pipeline is faring. Beautiful. So I'm going to click on this experiment, click on the running job, and as we have always done, these two are now running. As we've always done, we're going to click on view profiling. Now immediately these two datasets are being pulled, then the next component is going to execute as well. Now we'll click on view profiling to see where we are with the jobs that are running. So with the first job, I could increase this. With data importation, this is ongoing right now. It's being queued. It's not running, it's being queued. And then I could always click on refresh to see if there has been updates made. Yes, so this has improved, and I'll just add this. So we'll wait, and immediately our pipeline has completed. We'll see the results of our pipeline. Now that our pipeline is completed, let's take a look at the combined dataset. So I'm going to close this off, and I'm going to look at this. I'm going to preview this data. Would notice that we now have, let me expand this, we now have 14 columns. Dataset 1 initially had 8 columns, dataset 2 had 6 columns. Now the combination of the two gives us 14 total columns. So now we could see that from row number down to tenure was for first dataset, and from balance down to exited, these were columns we got from the second dataset. So these two datasets have now been combined. We can as well click on them to see the statistics. We've learned to add columns together. Now, how do we merge rows? Immediately after that, we'd learn to take care of missing values. So how do we combine rows from one dataset to another dataset? To do that, we need to pull out the two datasets that we want to use and then ensure that those columns are the same. Okay, then we move the rows from one dataset to the other. We're going to use our import data to always get data from any source. So this here, we're going to move dataset from dataset 4 to dataset 3. So both datasets have the same columns, as we're going to see right here. So we'll browse. I'm going to select dataset 3. Then down to my node information, I'm going to call this dataset 3. Now I'm going to do the same for dataset 4. So this is going to be dataset 4. I'm going to change the node information to dataset. So we have these two datasets, and let's preview the data. So the data has attributes like row number down to exited, save, and for dataset 4 it has the same as well, from row number down to exited. Powerful. So now I want to add rows from here down here. I'm going to pick up add rows. I'll drag this down to the center, and I'm going to connect this two. Now here I do not need to really make any major change. So ensure there are no spaces in your dataset names and configure and submit. Here we've done this so many times. I'm going to go with a new experiment, okay, and then I'm going to name the description could still be this. Input and output would be the same. The runtime settings, I'm going to select the cluster, and then here it's important to select our data store, right? And then I'm going to review. Yes, this is fine, and I'm going to submit. Now this pipeline has been submitted, and we can go ahead to our jobs, and let's refresh. I've not seen, yes, so this is the one we just created. Now we click on this, wait for it to pop up. Yes, we click on this, and here we are. So our pipeline is running. It's going to import dataset 3, it's going to import dataset 4, and it's going to add the rows of dataset 4 into dataset 3. So I'm going to pause this as it's going to take a while, and I'm going to get back right after.
Perfect. We've just had a successful pipeline run. Checking out the first dataset. The first dataset has 300 rows. Okay. Now, the second dataset should have how many rows? It should have 200 rows. Now, this dataset has 200 rows. Taking the results of the combination of these rows, we should have 300 plus 200. This should give us 500 rows. With this, we've learned how to successfully append rows from two datasets together. Well done on completing today's class. Let's quickly recap the key points we've covered. We explored how to set up an Azure machine learning environment, including creating an Azure subscription, setting up an Azure ML workspace, and configuring compute clusters. We also discussed key data preparation techniques such as importing data from URLs, defining column headers, modifying data types, managing storage accounts and data stores, and performing operations like concatenating columns and appending rows from multiple datasets. A memorable takeaway from today's session is understanding how to effectively prepare and organize datasets for the machine learning workflows in Azure ML. This is something you can start applying right away. To ensure you're engaged and practicing, I've prepared an assignment for you. In this assignment, you would work with the breast cancer dataset to perform various data pre-processing tasks and gain hands-on experience using Azure ML Studio. You would learn how to import and modify datasets, concatenate and append data, and document your work through pipelines. The goal is to help you become proficient in building and managing Azure machine learning pipelines. By completing this assignment, you will develop the skills needed to handle data pre-processing tasks effectively and prepare datasets for machine learning problems. Your tasks are as follows. 1. Create an Azure subscription and set up an Azure ML workspace, then create a compute cluster in Azure Machine Learning Studio. 2. Import the breast cancer body dataset from the given URL. Next, add column headers to the dataset using the breast cancer header text file. 3. Import the datasets breast cancer 1 and breast cancer 2. Then combine the columns from the two datasets into a single dataset by using the add columns component. 4. Import the datasets breast cancer 3 and breast cancer 4. Combine the rows from the two datasets into a single dataset using the add rows component. The full assignment details would also be made available on the learning portal. If you encounter any challenges, don't hesitate to reach out to a teaching assistant for support. You can also engage via Google Classroom for additional guidance and clarification. Thank you for being an active learner in today's session. Keep pushing your boundaries, and I look forward to seeing your progress in the next class. See you soon.
Well done on completing today's class. Let's quickly recap the key points we've covered. We explored how to set up an Azure machine learning environment, including creating an Azure subscription, setting up an Azure ML workspace, and configuring compute clusters. We also discussed key data preparation techniques such as importing data from URLs, defining column headers, modifying column types, managing storage accounts and data stores, and performing operations like concatenating columns and appending rows from multiple datasets. A memorable takeaway from today's session is understanding how to effectively prepare and organize datasets for machine learning workflows in Azure ML. This is something you can start applying right away. To ensure you're engaged and practicing, I've prepared an assignment for you. In this assignment, you will work with breast cancer datasets to perform various data pre-processing tasks and gain hands-on experience using Azure Machine Learning Studio. You would learn how to import and modify datasets, concatenate and append data, and document your work through pipelines. The goal is to help you become proficient in building and managing Azure Machine Learning pipelines. By completing this assignment, you will develop the skills needed to handle data processing tasks effectively and prepare datasets for machine learning problems. Your tasks are as follows. 1. Create an Azure subscription and set up an Azure ML workspace. Then create a compute cluster in Azure Machine Learning Studio. 2. Import the breast cancer body dataset from the given URL. Next, add column headers to the dataset using the breast cancer body text file. 3. Import the dataset breast cancer 1 and breast cancer 2. Then combine the columns from the two datasets into a single dataset by using the add columns component. 4. Import the datasets breast cancer 3 and breast cancer 4 and add the rows of these two datasets using the add rows component. The full assignment details would also be available on the learning portal. If you encounter any challenges, don't hesitate to reach out to a teaching assistant for support. You can also engage via Google Classroom for additional guidance and clarification. Thank you for being an active learner in today's session. Keep pushing your boundaries, and I look forward to seeing your progress in the next class. See you soon.